Alrighty, guys. Well, that's a little weird. Oh no, I forgot it reset the audio board. That's great. All right,
Nice.
well, I think we're okay though, because I can
Sounds
just
good. Are you
peek
talking about
this
the
up.
input
Yeah,
or the? Yeah.
it doesn't say. Yeah, we'll be a little bit lower volume.
Ooh.
Are we
but-
live? Can you see us live?
Yes.
Okay, good.
We're live. We are live. We lost power here in Red Moon Studios.
We did.
So it's gonna be. Bear with us. We're trying to get everything
Yeah.
back in order here.
There's some bad storms.
Weird. This
You
looks a little.
can put it right out.
A little dark there.
Got cut off there.
But yeah, that was interesting. That was fun. Wasn't expecting that.
There was a sign we should stop talking about Deadpool and start talking about something else.
I guess so. Well,
Yes.
it's funny because the rest of the show still revolves around the MCU.
Yeah.
But you know what? Hey, we're back.
Yeah.
We're live again. So let's just roll that headline open and get right into it. All righty.
I'm ready.
Ready for some headlines? Here's the thing. I don't know if the board is going to work or not. There's some things going on over here.
This works.
We're going to find out because I got to reset the key and everything. Oh, my gosh. I love power outages. Just love it. But, yeah, we only have one headline to talk about tonight.
Really? Yeah.
That's it.
Well, we already discussed how Deadpool and Wolverine have breaking records. That was our only other headline.
That's true.
Well, actually, and I kind of wanted to read off all of the records it broke.
We can.
So, if Keith, if you don't mind pulling up that article.
Yeah.
It should be our first link. It'll be linked in the description below.
I have it. Deadline.com.
And just try to draw this out a little bit while I try to get some things working over here.
Draw it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let me get my
it's,
pen. Hold on.
all the box office records broken by Deadpool and Wolverine. Highest R-rated. No, we won't draw it out that long.
Yeah, don't sound like a handicapped person.
Sound
Just-
like what's it?
we need
In
dramatic pauses,
Zootopia,
though.
the sloth.
Oh yeah.
Highest R-rated opening of all time, both worldwide and domestic. It had 444.1 million worldwide, so nearly $500 million opening weekend worldwide.
Yeah.
And 211 domestic, so that's incredible. Biggest global opening since Avatar: The Way of Water, which was 439. Biggest domestic opening ever for Ryan Reynolds, beating his first Deadpool movie, which was 132 million. Biggest domestic opening ever for Hugh Jackman, which beat his X-Men: The Last Stand, which, 102.
Yeah, that's
It was big for its time.
Yeah,
but it was
yeah,
not
I
a great
guess.
movie. Biggest domestic opening ever for filmmaker Sean Levy, beating 2009's Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, which is 54.1 million. He did move on to bigger and better things.
Yes, he did.
Highest July opening.
That did well though too.
It did.
Both of those movies did.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah,
huge.
There were
second
three.
one was not very.
There were three. Night
But
at the
they
Museum.
they brought in the money.
They did.
Like,
Yeah,
they were big at the box
of course
office.
they were.
They're
There
good
were three
family
of them.
films, yeah.
Highest July opening weekend of all time at domestic box office, surpassing The Lion King, 191.8 million.
Like The Lion King, or
It doesn't
the,
say which Lion King. It just says
it's gotta be the animated
new one.
one.
It's
No?
the new one.
Really?
Yeah, the animated one
I
was
doubt it made
popular, but no.
191 opening weekend.
Back in the day, no.
Not in
yeah.
the 90s,
Right.
yeah.
It was definitely the Beyonce one.
Yeah.
Yep. That's why they're doing Mufasa. Yeah.
Marvel, unfortunately, live action Lion King was a success financially. Marvel Cinematic Universe is the highest grossing film franchise of all time with 30 billion.
34 titles.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
23 of them were the Infinity Saga.
Yeah. Well,
Which is insane.
How
I mean,
great
but
they
and
were.
it's crazy because I think it maybe you already read this stat, but it was out of the 34. I mean, every single one of them, even the bad ones,
it
have
said-
debuted at number one.
yeah, it says
This
that
is
was the next
34th.
That was
one.
the next one was the 34th consecutive MCU release to debut at number one
That's
at the
insane.
at the
Debut.
domestic box office. Debut number one
Is
domestically.
it French?
Highest domestic opening weekend of 2024 and highest since Spider-Man No Way Home in December of 2021.
And rightfully so.
Yep.
Because that really was the last one. And I will say this. Didn't say this during the review. This movie by far is much better in terms of how I felt leaving the theater and in terms of overall value from start to finish than I think No Way Home.
Oh, I agree.
To me,
Yeah.
No Way Home didn't get good.
It was only nostalgia and fan
yes,
service.
and it honestly was a lackluster film all the way up until
the last 45
the
minutes
Peter
or
Parkers
something.
are introduced.
Yep.
Because it sucks because they even try to throw Aunt May's death in there as like a gut punch well before
Spoiler,
that happens.
if you haven't seen, I mean, it's a 3-year-old movie.
Yeah, I was
still,
saying that one.
you know.
Yeah, but it's just it was like no, this isn't sticking with me. And then they introduced the Peters. Then they introduced. Oh, and I actually did see. It was kind of funny. It was a tweet, and it was talking about this whole controversy of what we're gonna move into next with some more MCU news, and basically they posted the picture of Logan dying. Or Wolverine dying in Logan, and then the picture of who we're going to be talking about now. I mean, no, everybody knows the news is out. Freaking Robert Downey Jr., RDJ coming back to the MCU.
Yeah,
but they posted those in his picture in Endgame, and there was this tweet that got huge, likes of these two moments mean nothing.
Nothing now.
And the tweet response that got almost half as amount as likes, which we're talking like 170,000 likes, so it was still popular. Said, no. Comic book rule number 1: nobody's dead except Uncle Ben.
Yep.
That's the only consistent dead person in all of comic
It's
book
like nobody
lore.
stays,
but true. Yeah.
Nobody stays dead. But
And
Uncle
that
Ben.
was the
Ben.
anchor point at which you had an even more emotional gut punch, I would argue, in No Way Home. After Aunt May's death did nothing for me, you have the Peter Parkers all standing around talking about Uncle Ben's
And that was
death.
way better.
Way better.
One of them talks about Gwen's death.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, Uncle Ben, Gwen, and
Still way
Aunt
better.
May, yeah.
So much better.
And I would say, Deadpool Wolverine had better emotional pull. I personally like the meme I sent you all of Robert Downey Jr. and Deadpool going, Disney's going to make him do this until he's 90.
Yep.
I was like, oh, it's so true.
It is true. Very true.
But anyways, it's number 6 highest domestic opening of all time so far. I'm sure it'll go up. Well, no, opening, so it won't go up. That's its opening. Let's see.
I think
That's basically the same
was
fact. There's two. Well, it says 6th highest domestic and then 6th highest opening day at the domestic box office.
6th highest opening weekend
opening
of all
weekend
time,
and
then
opening day. Well,
yeah.
one of them was bold and the other part wasn't
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
I don't know why.
Number 4 highest superhero opening of all time, weekend of all time. Number 2 highest opening weekend for a third installment of all time. They're really breaking. I mean, it's still they are records, but they are really breaking.
But it
fishing
is
for
it
records
is
now.
but it's still
Yeah.
crazy that I'm like it's because I still went back and looked, and the fact that what was it out of the top 25?
Well, that's what I was going to.
Yeah,
this is insane. As of this post, Walt Disney is responsible for 16 of the top 20 opening domestic weekends of all time, with the MCU responsible for 11 of the top 20.
11 MCU films of the top 20 weekends
Walt
of all
Disney
time.
owns 5 of the top 6 opening weekends of all time at the domestic box office. Highest opening weekend ever for a U.S. R-rated release. Highest opening weekend abroad since Avatar: The Way of Water. And then the final one is highest opening weekend of 2024 in Germany, UK, Australia, and Japan.
And what was the one that it brought up the beating Joker? Because it beat out its original or its
That was the
opening weekend.
R-rated one.
Yeah.
It's the highest opening.
So like we
R-rated.
alluded to already, I think it's definitely going to eclipse its whole theatrical run.
Yeah. I think it'll be the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time, just period.
Just crazy.
Yeah.
Just absolutely nuts. I mean, just the amount of accolades that it's already received. It's going to continue
When you
to
make something
Joker-
fans
financial
want to see.
accolades.
Before Joker, that was Passion of the Christ, right?
Yeah,
I believe
the
so.
highest grossing R.
Actually, no. I think it was still Deadpool did beat Passion back when it originally
came out.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it was the first one to eclipse that. The Passion came out in 2004, so it had about a good 10-year run almost before it got beat.
I would like to see them adjusted for inflation, just out of curiosity. But I mean, I still think Deadpool Wolverine's going to have it trounced.
Oh yeah, easily.
For
I mean,
sure.
I mean,
I'm more curious about.
I feel like
the first
inflation only
Deadpool.
really creeps in there when you're talking like 50s and 60s.
When you're getting that
40s
far,
maybe.
like,
Yeah.
it's
One's
not,
about the
you
real
know.
Jesus, and the other one's about the Marvel Jesus.
Yeah. And I will say, for those who thought maybe it was, I'm like, the fact that he prefaces it with Marvel Jesus, I'm like,
Yeah.
he is alluding to Jesus as Christ.
Yeah,
He's just saying in the Marvel universe. So it's
Yeah.
like,
he's
not
just trying to be Marvel savior.
sacrilegious.
Yeah.
No,
in
he.
it.
Well, I
Right.
don't feel like he was mocking. If anything, I felt like it reiterated the fact that
Jesus saves.
is a
Yeah.
savior.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can't say. 'cause
Which granted,
spoiler
then you
alert
could get
would-
into like
yeah.
the multiverse and we're not going down that route.
Yeah, that's tons to get into.
But I will say, and this has nothing to do with the bearing of MCU, and this, I think it is interesting nowadays when they talk about how much, obviously the studios want to know how much a movie's made. But it is interesting if you were to break down ticket sales, because I think this would be the case with something like Inside Out 2. Not saying that it obviously wasn't hugely popular and did very well for them, but if you think about how much a general audience ticket sells for now, it's only guaranteed to be a heck of a lot more valuable nowadays than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's where you could say adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
But I would almost want to see numbers on how many tickets sold when it comes to any movie release, because that's where you can get down in the
How
sand
many people
of
actually
how
wanted to
many
see
people actually bought this ticket, and it went towards the viewing of this movie.
100.
I think one thing, all of these
100 people.
100.
No, I meant 100%, but I was agreeing with
the
slang for I agree. 100.
100.
Yeah.
100.
Hundo.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Sean?
All of these records that it breaks just shows me that it's not superhero fatigue, it's shitty story fatigue and woke fatigue.
True.
And diversity fatigue.
I mean, and we
this
talked
movie
about
breaks all of those things
this last
and-
week, even before seeing it, that this is the only Marvel movie on the docket for this whole year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was wise to do that, and for it to be, I mean, I know, I think it was also funny because you sent it too, and I was going to say this is an anchor point for moving forward, but this did introduce anchor beings, and you sent that meme of Harrison Ford at Comic-Con.
He's like, I think
sent
Sean
it,
sent
yeah.
Oh, you sent it? Okay.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious when he's just like, what the heck? Like, what the hell are you talking? He's like, I'm out of orbit. When he says that.
It's like Harrison Ford doesn't even know who he's
doesn't
playing.
know, yeah.
I love it. He's like, I show up, they pay me, I provide the lines. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, anymore, it's more entertaining to go to a movie to see just how little Harrison Ford gave a crap about the role he was playing than to actually see
I
him.
actually think-
Indiana Jones is the only character that he cared about.
But, well,
I
no,
really
that's,
feel like-
okay. The weird thing is, I feel like, at least from what I've seen in the trailer for this new Captain America,
Oh, no, it fits his character.
I think Harrison Ford looks like he gave more effort to this than he did in the last Indiana Jones. I think he knew the
I think
last
it's
one was
funny.
going to
He's
suck.
the president in Brave New World. He was the president in Air Force One.
Right.
Too.
He's reprising his role.
still
He's
the
just
president.
taking over the role from
Yeah.
William Hurt. So, but I mean,
And they addressed the mustache with that
Yes.
stupid line.
Yeah.
I don't think Brave New World will open the way Deadpool did.
No.
I think that again. I think that just shows that it's not the fatigue of the Marvel superhero movies. I think it's just the movie in general. People knew Ryan was going to give it all in this movie, and that's why they came out to see it. They don't think that about Captain America. And so,
and honestly, I mean, look, you have the two huge leads. You have both Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are the draw to this film.
Yeah.
And it's like, I hate to say it, but, two white dudes who got a name for themselves. I mean, you call it what you want. It's like, they're the ones that are people putting butts in seats.
But you're also giving fans of the comics what they want too, because you did Deadpool and Wolverine as they have been. Like you didn't do Captain America, but it's not actually Captain America. It's the Falcon taking over for Captain America.
Yeah.
You didn't do Thor, but it's not actually Thor. It's Jane who's now Thor for
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like you're actually like what people want, because I know the huge excuse, and we're going to get into it with the new.
Let's move on. Let's move on to that.
I was going to say, there's people who will say, well, Jane was Thor in the comics. Well, Falcon became Captain America in the comics. Well, there is 2 issues of a comic book where Tony Stark was Doctor Doom. Okay, thank you for the 2 issues in 80 years and thousands of... That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a great idea for a movie.
right. That's what I think. This movie, Deadpool, didn't have the girl bosses that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
Right.
That was one thing that was fresh for me. Is like, there's some girl bosses in the movie, but they're not. They're ones that people care about or cared about.
Or
And-
even, I was going to say, and it's funny because even the main villain, it was like, there wasn't some tortured past, or like the tortured past she talks about was very realistic for her storyline. And it really only seeked to absolve her of her hatred in this area called the Void, in the sense that it was like, oh, okay, she has a legitimate reason because she was sent here by, who she claims to be the blame for her, which I know you would explain to us out in the parking lot.
A little different in the comics,
Yeah.
but I mean, they simplified it for the movie, which is fine.
She was a better villain than Kang.
Yeah, no, she.
no doubt.
She's not a bad
Absolutely.
villain, and the thing is, like, her motivation and everything she does isn't because she's a woman. She is a female character, but her motivations and the things she does are cemented in the story and in the things that happen to her. It wasn't just like Captain Marvel where, well, you just have to be the best because we got to prove that a woman can be the best. It's like, okay, but you do that through the writing and the story and developing the character. Just saying, well, I'm a woman and I'm a superhero, and therefore that's good enough. It's like, okay, you could say the reverse about a man.
Yeah.
Look at Green Lantern, Ryan Reynolds, that was terrible. It's like, it doesn't matter that, he's a white man. It's the fact that it's a terrible story, a terrible writing, terrible everything.
Right. And obviously what I was alluding to earlier is just that, yeah, when you rise above the woke nonsense and you just tell a good story and you have characters that are either worth caring about or even ones that you think they might have glossed over, ultimately, though, it's not going to outshine the devotion that they put in and the hard work they put in because, again, that shows through. I mean, heck, that's why I think even people were excited to see whether they knew it was going to be Blake Lively or not, Lady Deadpool.
Yeah.
It was teased before the movie came out.
Everybody went, who is it, Taylor Swift? Is it Blake Lively? Many people were saying it's just going to be Ryan Reynolds in a ponytail, which would have been hilarious.
Right. And there was that would have been funny.
Ryan Reynolds don't have that body. Sorry.
No.
It could have done it in a funny way. But anyways, let's move on to the big news that came out this past weekend. Of course, we've already talked about it a little bit, but RDJ coming back to the MCU, revitalizing it after this huge weekend
and the
for
Russos
Marvel.
Too,
I'm more excited
and
about
the
that.
Russos.
Yeah.
Well, apparently he said, I was reading an article, his stipulation was he would only return if the Russos were directing. So
Wow.
That's a good stipulation.
Okay.
It's good faith in them.
Yes, it is, but at the same time, I'm just like, the Russos can't always be around. Like, at some point, Marvel, like, what are you going to do? It's like, every time you have a bad movie, you're going to try to bring the Russos back. You can't forever. Yeah. I'm sure they don't want to make Avengers
Till they're
movie.
90.
RDJ's not going to be around forever.
Exactly. It's like, even with him being Doom, it's like, okay, how long is he going to be Doom? I don't think he's actually going to be the main Doom.
And this is weird because I don't know where we sit on this in terms of, because we briefly kind of discussed it.
I'm
in
very
text.
apprehensive of it.
Well, hold on. I want to preface this. I want to get this out there, because if you think about it, we all come from different angles in terms of, I would say, yes, you're a comic book nerd at the table, Keith. Like, you have definitely much more understanding and nuance in that world. Sean and I probably come from it more from a movie spectacle, but also I would say, one, I know how much he loved Deadpool and Wolverine, and then I'm more on the fence of, is this something that, is it charting territory that we've already been there, done that? It's like, can we move on? I just want to kind of get a read of our feelings across the table of what we think about the situation, because I think we all probably come at it and approach it differently.
Yeah, I agree. I think
like
we
against
have
the initial
varying
reveal,
levels,
and then after we mold it over, like what were we ultimately thinking?
I'm not against it. I don't hate it, but my initial reaction was not the excited, oh yeah, Marvel's back, MCU's back, that a lot of people online had. Actually, it was more of a gut punch because Doctor Doom is like one of my favorite characters from Marvel ever, especially villains. And I want to see like Victor Von Doom, the classic character, done well on screen. Because even though we've had Victor Von Doom in 3 Fantastic Four movies, it was nothing like the character from the comics, and he was terrible.
Was he that guy that was in Nip Tuck, or was that the Silver
Yes.
Surfer?
That was the first two.
Okay, all right.
The first two,
first
the guy
two.
from Nip Tuck was him, and then
I don't even remember who played him in the other one.
Yeah, I think it was like a Middle Eastern guy. It was terrible.
Pedro Pascal.
No.
I know he's not Middle Eastern.
I'm not
he's
sold
in
on-
everything.
he's
I'm
playing
not
somebody
sold
else.
on him being Reed Richards either.
Yeah.
But we'll go through that when it comes. But yeah, when I heard it, I was just like, do I think RDJ can play Doctor Doom? 100%. I think he can. He's a good actor, and Doctor Doom like definitely needs someone that can have gravitas, but can also chew the scenery, and RDJ can do both.
He said he likes playing complicated characters.
And I think like perfect, but then knowing that he was already Tony Stark, I'm like, okay, while RDJ could do the role, he's already Tony Stark, and I don't want to see evil Tony Stark be Doctor Doom, or even if it's a Doctor Doom variant that never was Tony Stark, it's just Victor Von Doom that's for some reason looks like Tony Stark. It's always going to have that connection to his past character. And I just I really wanted to see Doctor Doom. So I'm a little, I don't think it can be done well. I think it can be done well. I was just like,
Can
I
I
don't
ask
know.
you another question? Someone with the same star power, who would you want to see as Victor Von Doom?
I honestly, and again, he was actually already a Marvel villain, but it was a terrible written villain, so I think he could pull it off. Anyways, I think Mads Mikkelsen would be a good Doctor Doom.
He doesn't have RDJ power.
He doesn't have RDJ power though.
But that's
the
what
thing.
I'm wondering.
But he can act.
But who in RDJ power?
Who could they pull? I wouldn't be.
That would have been just.
I don't think anybody has RDJ level as far as Marvel goes.
Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and I'm not saying they would be Victor Von Doom.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call Brad Pitt RDJ level either.
What?
No,
really?
Not acting wise. Maybe popularity wise.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, star power.
That one's tough for me.
I don't care about star power as much as I care
but
about.
But that's clearly to me what this role was.
Hasn't done nearly as much as Brad Pitt, so I don't know the range.
Yeah.
Like I mean, he's done some great films, but I don't feel like he has.
I don't know, between Chaplin and then even Oppenheimer, like I think he can do accents and different personalities enough that
to me he has the same mannerisms.
He's got Dr. Dolittle and all these other things. He does have
the same mannerisms.
Or
I don't know.
For someone who's Mark back on the scene after his long sabbatical and rightfully so from his getting over alcoholism and great, he's had the resurrection back in the industry.
Maybe not.
Here we go.
Okay,
maybe not RDJ and Brad Pitt level. He's pretty popular. I think he could, and it's one that I think not a lot of people would expect. I would have rather Henry Cavill be Dr. Doom than Henry Cavill actually I think could pull it off.
The only reason I would say that is equal to RDJ level is because of his status in other superhero movies like Man of Steel as Superman, and
he can do gritty and dark like with The Witcher and he can chew scenery. So I'm like, I think he could do because
he was great in Argyle.
Dr. Doom is. He could be a very campy character, but in a good way. So I'm like, I could
his
see
body build. Is Dr. Doom that
he's
swole?
Be all
okay. Well, here's another criticism though that I read after the fact of people who were dissing this decision is that Victor Von Doom or Dr. Doom in general never takes his mask off. He's always masked.
You'll never see. You very rarely. I wouldn't say never. There's a few instances, but I mean it's all scarred up and stuff like Deadpool. Very rarely, like Dr. Doom is without the mask. Like he should always be.
So if he doesn't take his mask off, I'm perfectly fine with RDJ playing the role.
And I could see that too. If there's a thing where you never actually see that he looks like Tony Stark and he can disguise his voice well enough to pull it off, I would think there would have to be some origin, and in the origin,
I don't think they would ever do that. I mean, the whole point of
why
sticking
bring RDJ
him
back if you don't see his face?
It's like I mean, it's kind of like them putting Paul Bettany Bettany, whatever his name was, as Vision. It's like. No, he wasn't a huge known actor, but when he was first revealed and it wasn't Vision, it was just the voice of Ultron.
Yeah.
And then he becomes Vision. You're just kind of like, I recognize that voice.
He was the voice of Jarvis.
In Endgame,
Jarvis.
In Endgame, it is him. I mean, he doesn't change into his like Vision costume.
Right.
Like he's putting on the appearance of a human being.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And
so
it's
just the actor. So you do see him.
Almost every superhero movie. Like people criticize Spider-Man for that because at the end of every Spider-Man movie, his mask gets ripped so you can see the actor's face, and it's like you always have to see the actor's face at some point.
Yeah. And that's the weird part is that for someone, it would almost be interesting for them to go that route of it being totally masked, and you know who the actor is, but it's someone who puts, I mean, in the same way that Darth Vader is sold by James Earl Jones, and even whether you're a kid or even as an adult and you've seen James Earl Jones and other things, the voice is so iconically that character.
Yes.
And even when you see Darth Vader's face for the last 5 minutes of Return of the Jedi, it's not disappointment because it reveals what it's supposed to be, which is like this frail old man who just died.
Yeah.
But it's like you wouldn't have Darth Vader without James Earl Jones. I mean, you can't have him without him. So I'm like, to me, having someone even in that regard that could provide the voice in such a way that the face, but you don't need to see the face.
Well, like the Mandalorian. Like Pedro Pascal's not always in costume as Mandalorian. There's like 3 different people that play him, and he.
But it's funny because that only worked for me in the sense that I didn't really. Pedro Pascal was not as huge as he is now.
No, not
before
when he first started
Mandalorian.
He does take his mask off though.
Yeah,
he does a couple times.
And even when he does in the show, it was kind of like that's it.
That's
But even then, I wasn't. It was only when he started popping up everywhere else that I was like, now he's just too recognizable.
Yep.
And that's my only problem with this is it seemed like at first I kind of get swept away in the fandom in the same way that I might with a trailer reveal or with a video game reveal that's a big game. I get swept up in the, oh man, this is cool, exciting, it's
awesome.
a rush.
Yeah.
But then after mulling it over, and I'm just like, with bringing the Russos back, with bringing him, it just felt like they were trying to go back to, the basics of, we know this is a success. We're going to recreate that recipe. Not saying the movies are going to be bad.
No.
And even them revealing the titles of Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, I think honestly what this really was not so much we need to return to normalcy and get back right on track.
We need to get rid of Kang.
It was that.
Yeah.
100% that.
Yeah.
It was
because the next Avengers was supposed to be the Kang Dynasty,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So the fact that they had to rewrite that entirely and they were thinking, what kind of reveal could we have
We'll
that
make
would
people forget
take
about Kang.
completely
Yeah.
forget about Kang?
And bring, because they know this is going to put butts in seats. It doesn't matter. And granted, I'm still curious. I'm not going to write it off. I think it can still be pulled off and done well. And I would trust the Russos and RDJ to respect the legacy that they created with Tony Stark. So hopefully they do it justice. Like I said, I'm cautiously apprehensive, but I'm not totally against it yet. It just does feel like a move by Marvel to say, well, we're doing terribly, but if we bring the Russos back and RDJ back, that'll put butts in seats no matter what.
Right.
So,
And it was insane the amount of publications I saw after this news broke that were reporting on it. RGJ returns to MCU. And I was like, and I'm not talking about just Hollywood Reporter and Variety, all your Hollywood outlets.
It was everywhere.
All the news was breaking.
They
And
were
I was just
posting pictures of him in the backseat of his car with his
mask,
Doom's
Yes.
mask and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, wow.
it was a huge piece of
massive,
news that
yeah.
I
broke.
want everybody to know.
But it was just, I'm not, I'm in the same boat as you, Keith. I think I'm actually erring a little bit more negative just because it's not that I want to see the MCU fail. I mean, Deadpool Wolverine is a perfect example of being pleasantly surprised by what can still be pulled off. I guess what I was hoping for was the course correction into a new era from the failings that we've seen with this latest phase would be more of a, all right, we're gonna pull up our bootstraps. We're gonna get down and dirty and make sure that we really put forth a great team and put forth the best effort we can. Not just returning to the glory days of what the MCU was, but where do we see this charting forward? Because I still see the MCU as a vulnerable brand, in that one you'll have huge tentpole franchises. Tentpole movies as part of the franchise that are going to bring in buku bucks.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we just named all 34 releases of the MCU have come out at number one at the box office. That's enough to keep it going for probably a full 50 years before they say, oh, we need to cut back. I mean, they would really have to see one come out and lose that top spot for them to think, oh, we just don't have it anymore. And so because they're that far cry and they've seen the weakness of certain installments, I was just hoping for them to really rally behind, reinvigorating that spirit of when Kevin Feige became the sole purveyor of what was to come in the MCU and what the MCU has become. I was hoping that he would kind of go back to the drawing board and say, okay, but what is the next evolution?
Yeah.
What is the real next step in this franchise? And I was hoping that it wouldn't be returning to what has been.
Yeah.
That's really where I stand right now. Again, because we do a movie review podcast, because we still keep up to date and tabs on everything going on in the industry, we're going to go see these movies. And if they are great like Deadpool Wolverine, hey, we'll call it like we see it.
And they might be. I do. They also announced the Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom would be in both Avengers Doomsday, Avengers Secret Wars, which makes sense. Those characters are heavily, the plot of those stories, especially Doomsday, would revolve heavily around Doctor Doom. But the plot of Secret Wars heavily involves Doctor Doom and then Fantastic Four. And that's the thing about me that I think really has baffled me most about the multiverse. I know they just got Fox right when they were ending in the Infinity Saga and getting into this. But they pivoted fast into the multiverse with Kang, which is a Fantastic Four character. So they pivoted pretty quickly into that. Yet they still have waited. It's going to be, I think, next year that Fantastic Four comes out.
Yeah.
And it's you waited right until before your two Avengers movies to introduce the characters that have a core connection to those stories. And it feels like the story of the multiverse was never set up properly. It's like they're now trying to go back and fix it. It's like that's my problem. Is I agree with you.
They're going to prune it.
Feige should have from the get-go known. Okay, if we're going to do the multiverse, if we're going to do Kang, which is going to involve Fantastic Four
Jonathan
2.
Majors screwed that up.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think they were on a good path, but I think he screwed that up.
I don't know.
The movie sucked. I'm just saying the story, like their overarching thing to go into the multiverse and into the Kang thing, I think that was going to be a good, solid story. I just think
that's the weird thing is, honestly, after No Way Home, and even before that, you still had Eternals, which was crap. We just got revealed what the Eternals...
I think that was a full pivot just to make make Eternals matter for some way. It's like, without this movie, we wouldn't have Adamantium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, so I'm like, you have this whole Eternals thing, then you have No Way Home, which is a fan favorite for the nostalgia reason. Then you have Multiverse of Madness. That was not that great. Then you have Quantumania. Terrible. Yeah, you have Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but that was, again... nostalgia for a different reason. It was a send-off to the Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. And
all
as
of their best movies have been nostalgic send-offs.
Right. No, they really have. Yeah. And that's my only problem is because even with these new Avengers movies, okay, let's say the Fantastic Four First Steps come out and it creates a new band of heroes that we're all on board with. And like you said, it's a little late because then the next major installments are Avengers.
Yeah.
Really, what Avengers are going to be in these two Avengers movies that we're going to care about?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have a Thor.
Well, that's
we don't have a
Captain
Chris
America
Evans as Captain
the
America.
idea of setting up a new Avengers, so we'll see.
But that's what I'm saying. We've already talked about it before on the show, but all of the new characters they set up, I think minus maybe it was Hawkeye handing it off to
Kate Bishop.
But what? Oh, is that her name?
Hawkeye. She's Hawkeye.
Oh, she is Hawkeye. So I didn't know she took on the title. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's like, that alone, it's like I've heard positive reaction out of that. Mm-hmm. But even Hawkeye, to a degree, while he was great in Endgame, and Jeremy Renner, I think, did a good job of bringing his story around, and he plays the pivotal role, Hawkeye was never a central focus of the original Avengers. You had Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, Thor.
Yeah.
And
those are your four main.
Those are it. That's it.
But there's multiple, like in the comics, like those aren't the only Avengers.
No,
but they just haven't done a good job of introducing.
And I was gonna say, and we know that going into these even.
Yeah.
But all the passing of the torches have been so poorly done that we don't have a band of characters that we care about to see. Because you could slap Avengers on it and say, oh, it's Avengers Doomsday, Avengers Secret Wars. Immediately, my Avengers in my head
goes back
are
to the old
Avengers,
guard.
Age of Ultron,
Infinity
War,
and
Endgame.
Yep.
Those are the Avengers I think of.
Yep.
But those are not the Avengers we're talking about.
You'll
here.
have Doctor Strange, Thor, and that's
Hulk.
really, and Hulk, yeah. But then you'll have new Captain America, and I guess
Hawkeye.
The new Hawkeye. Well,
Black
that might
Widow
be Young
is
Avengers, so
maybe
going to
be what's her name?
I think new Hawkeye is going to lead the Young Avengers.
Yeah, the other chick is in the Thunderbolts. She's not going to be an Avenger
because they did the after credits scene with the Young Avenger thing, and that'll be Hawkeye.
Well,
so.
we're getting what's her name too is
Black Widow is in
Ironheart.
Thunderbolts. So Ironheart's somewhere in there, but I don't care about.
But
her
she's one of the Young Avengers too, isn't she?
She should be, but. Again, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. but that's what I'm saying. We really don't know. I mean, other than Anthony Mackie as the new Captain America, and
we're assuming Thor and Hulk. I'm sure Hulk will be in there because Mark Ruffalo, he says yes to everything. And Thor,
including
and
Kamala Harris,
and Chris Hemsworth is
he's on board for that big time.
He wants to do. Chris Hemsworth wants to do another Thor movie, so I think he would still be around for.
But he wants to bring Thor back to yeah.
And I'm fine with that. And the thing is I definitely think that we're gonna get a scene in Avengers, whether it's comedic or an actual send-off of. Again, I don't want to spoil it, but something we saw in this past movie.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see that play out.
It's going to be like Infinity War and Endgame, where just pretty much every character that's been introduced since Endgame will probably be in these Avenger films in some way. But like you said,
the rumor is it's building towards an X-Men Avengers standoff.
Well, Secret Wars should technically have like more characters than even Endgame when you start.
But see, and here's the weird thing:
storyline and the multiverse.
I mean, we say MCU, but yet. I mean, think about it. All we're talking about is Avengers. Yeah, we haven't even mentioned X-Men, and they haven't introduced them.
Not yet.
And I mean, that's something people are eager to see as well.
Just
and granted,
stingers.
if we know that these next 2 Avengers movies are May of 2025, or no, 26 and 27, then are there going to be reveals of other X-Men that play into
Unless
that?
they introduce them in Secret Wars, which is a lot to do, I think.
What was the movie that we went and saw where the end credit scene is Beast?
That's the Marvels.
That was the Marvels.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was it was him returning as Beast.
Kelsey Grammer.
Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah.
And even that, we all debated then. It was like that was kind of a throwaway.
Yeah.
Because it was a different variant.
It was another universe
Right,
that they were in. Yeah, I don't. It's weird because I know of all ways it can go based on comics, but I mean that doesn't matter, especially with the last couple of phases. What happens in the comics hasn't mattered at all. So.
Yeah, I'm not excited about RDJ. I don't know. I didn't get hyped about that much, but I am excited about the Russos. I think Infinity War and Endgame are not only 2 of the best superhero or Marvel movies, they're 2 of the better movies I've ever seen.
Winter
I love
Soldier,
those movies.
which was their first one.
That's
amazing.
true. Yes, I forgot they did Winter Soldier.
They did Winter Soldier.
God dang. So yeah, I trust them with the franchise. I just don't know how much free reign they're going to have because of Feige, and I also just don't really care about RDJ. I think
at this point it's safe to say Feige is going to be on board with kind of giving them what they want, in so much as they're repeating this because they haven't been they haven't been part of the MCU since Endgame. So it's like if they never really were part of the franchise when it was at its low points. I don't think Feige's going to hold that over their head and be like, well, we really need something stellar from you guys. Yeah. I think he's just going to be like, hey, look, we hired you for a reason. Like, you obviously know what you're doing in terms of, not only the hype machine, but in terms of kind of blending in what fans want and what the audience wants.
I do have a small amount of hope related to the Russos and the fact that back when they did Endgame, they did an interview where they had been asked, is there any storyline you would ever want to come back for? And they did say if Marvel ever did Secret Wars, they would be interested in directing it. So the fact that they had already been interested in it way back then and now they're hired, I'm like, well, that gives me some hope that they have a good idea for the story, because the fact that they were even interested in doing it before that was even like an idea, I'm like, okay, so maybe there's something there.
And I honestly do think that other than maybe small roles here and there, or even maybe mentions, I don't think we're going to get anything fully X-Men related until after Secret Wars, which means we're still like 3 years out.
Yeah.
I think you might get some more like Fox type stuff because Secret Wars heavily involves multiverses, so I think you might see like it. Maybe but Hugh Jackman has one more go.
Well, I was
going to
say, but in the same vein as we saw either in Deadpool Wolverine or even in the sense of like the Beast.
Yeah.
In that regard,
there'll be X-Men characters from alternate universes,
the ones
that are pulled in to help do whatever,
as little nods to that era, but also, hey, we still have X-Men property.
X-Men
we know
should also technically have a pretty heavy role in the Secret Wars story, but I don't.
But and while I think it would
play in the movie,
and it's weird because while I think it would be a good idea for them to have those sprinkled throughout, I think it's best that they hold off because look, anybody who loves X-Men is going to want a proper introduction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to rush it. You definitely don't need to do a fantastic... And I'm not saying anything wrong with Fantastic Four, because Lord knows they have their fan base who have...
Yeah. They're not as big as X-Men.
I don't know.
But they have been arguing for a long time for them to be treated right.
Yeah.
And obviously through the terrible films we got in the early 2000s, and then, of course, the latest one that was just a debacle from Sony.
Yeah.
I do
it's
think...
still Fox.
Or it was Fox, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought... Did Sony have a hand in it?
No, Sony's only done Spider-Man and
Venom.
And I think Sony was who did the Ghost Rider movies. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's like I do think it's best because I think that is a franchise that needs to rest. I mean, you could argue MCU does, but one, they're not going to let it. It's their biggest cash cow.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally made over $30 billion. It's the highest grossing franchise in all of cinema. But I also do think that, again, certain IPs need to rest so that they can be rebounded or like revisited properly. I mean, that is what I would argue in favor of the MCU. I mean, that's, again, while I was like, okay, Endgame was the perfect time to do a reset button and to pass the torch. It's just that they fumbled it so bad that it hasn't panned out. And even though they're pivoting somewhat back to that, it showcases that even if the MCU is down, the X-Men could be the next big part of the MCU that they get right, and they need to take their time with it. They don't need to rush it. And yeah, 3 years seems like a long time. One, it'll be here before you know it, but two, I almost feel like you need that kind of rest for someone who is as pivotal as Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, who has played him all these years. You can't just turn around and cast another guy as Logan, except for, well, that would be a spoiler alert. I don't want to put that in there. There was one that was, there was a good payoff.
It was fun for the movie, but I would not want that.
What I wish they would have with Deadpool and Wolverine. I wish they would have, because I don't want to spoil too much either, but it has to do with the sacred timeline, and I was hoping that whatever they did in Deadpool and Wolverine would only leave the sacred timeline intact.
Agreed.
And that Wolverine would be in it, and Deadpool is in it, and the Avengers are in it, and
which is crazy
that
because
we would just move forward with one thing.
And talking to Keith, knowing that really is kind of what Secret Wars is. That's the end of the multiverse, more or less.
I mean, I wouldn't call it the end of the multiverse.
Or,
the
well,
multiverse never ceases to exist in the comics, but I mean, they could, I guess, use it as an end of the multiverse in the movies.
I would hope for the movies, because at this point, the multiverse makes no sense.
I would think the end of constantly focusing on the multiverse. You could leave it like there's always alternate realities out there.
But we're not going to go into them.
But we're not.
Right.
We're not
going to manipulate.
We're not constantly hopping universes.
Yeah.
Secret Wars can be used as a decent reset. That's kind of how Marvel did, because there's been 2 Secret War events in the Marvel comics, and one of them is how they launched like the Marvel Now line that was kind of condensed timelines into a single timeline, and then fans hated it, so they went back to the original timeline, kind of like DC did with the New 52, where they tried to reboot everything and fans hated it, so then they just went back to the classic. But they could actually use Secret Wars now to just do a fresh reboot if they wanted to. I just don't know if they would.
And it's funny because in that regard, it's always okay to go back in comic book land. It's not in movies.
There's a difference in like having like 60 years of continuity that Marvel's just like, nah, we don't care about that anymore. And then movies where it's like, maybe you should let it rest. And then a few years down the line, it's like, because like you said, you can't replace RDJ as Iron Man because he's cemented so much, but at some point down the line, if you're going to make certain storylines from the comics, you need to have an Iron Man.
Well, and again, that was the reason it was successful, and the reason the MCU became as big as it is because it was, one, nothing had ever been done like this before. We were all used to Batman changing every generation.
Yeah.
We were used to there being a Michael Keaton and a Val Kilmer, then a Christian Bale. George Clooney.
You got to throw him in there, man.
Yeah.
He had one movie.
Val Kilmer only had one movie.
Yeah.
At that point, I'll go along with the directors at that point. You had your Tim Burton, you had your Joel Schumacher, you had your Nolan.
Yeah.
But we were used to there not being a solidified universe that was cohesive.
Yeah.
The MCU started that and ran with it. And, even then, it's like, I would agree. It's like if you've gone this far and you're starting to see the weakness, it's not to just keep the thing going until you don't keep beating a dead horse. You give it some time to lay off, or at least with characters, with ones that you created that are always forever in this universe.
There's fantastic stories that haven't been like that in the comics that have not been told on screen yet, but it's hard to do them when you don't have a Tony Stark or a Steve Rogers, and it's like, you can adapt them without them, but then fans aren't going to like it because they're core characters in those stories. Yeah, you can recast,
and it's weird,
but then
and
fans also don't like that as much either.
I'm only throwing them out there because they're kind of big now, but it's like that's where I think, I hate to say it, you have to lean more heavily on something like a Glenn Powell or a Austin Butler. These people that you've seen creep up, and they've got some star power, and it's like, let's give them some legs. Let's put them in some roles that we know are going to cement them in like a new generation of the MCU. You get some of these fresher faces that have, baby star power right now that could be your Tom Cruises, your latest Henry Cavills, these ones that already have a name cemented for themselves, but this even further cements it. And I'm not saying they would sign on to it, but you clearly, that's what they've tried to do, and they have failed. With, I hate to say it, Anthony Mackie. It's like we only ever knew him as
Falcon,
the sidekick, as Falcon.
Yeah.
And him being handed the torch, he's not someone that has been able to hold his own in other regards.
He's not Steve Rogers.
He's not.
He even says that in his trailer.
He says it in the
Right.
trailer, yeah.
But I mean, we can move on. I know we're running
But
late.
I want to say one other thing
Sure.
too, and I don't know, it's not mentioned in this article, but I saw an interview with the Fantastic Four First Steps director saying that it will not be an origin story. That he said we don't have time to show you another origin story that's already been done before twice. And he was like, I'm not doing that with this film. It's going to start with the Fantastic Four already existing and ready
that's
to roll.
fine.
So
I mean,
it's interesting to see how they're going to do that because we've not seen them in the
Right.
MCU until now, but they're not
and
going to get an
something
origin.
tells me there's going to be, it's a self-contained story, but there's going to be eluding or flashbacks or some kind of,
Quick, yeah.
Well,
it'll just be a subtle
It's
like
set in
reference.
It's set in the 60s.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense for what they're trying to do with it. And I think they even announced that like it's going to be like an old time, like 4x3. The film's being shot in like 4x3.
Oh,
like
wow.
cool. Aspect
Okay.
ratio. Nice.
And I have a feeling they're going to be pulled in from another universe into the main MCU is probably what's going to happen. Because how do you explain?
Into modern time.
yeah. Because how do you explain it's like
They don't age.
well, the Fantastic Four
Yeah.
didn't exist in the MCU. It's like you would have thought if they were around in the 60s,
They would have helped
somebody,
out.
Like if they were around in the 60s, somebody, even if they were old now, like somebody would have been like, would have said something about them. Like Ant-Man is mentioned having been.
Now, it would have been
during-
cool to have Reed Richards working alongside Tony Stark's dad.
That would have been.
That
cool.
would be cool.
That would be cool. And I mean, we'll see. And maybe they can retcon it enough to make it make sense. We'll
Especially
see.
with that scene in Endgame where Tony
where he
goes,
goes
back,
back.
and there
Yeah.
could be a side character that's
And
mentioned, and
maybe,
it's like, oh,
yeah.
that's Reed Richards. Yeah, that's
Um,
Reed Richards' dad.
He's just like over working on a computer
Yeah.
the whole time.
They could find a way to make that work.
There's so many things, like even Captain America. There's so many things that when you look at like ideas that are out there, like based on the comics or the movies, where I'm like, oh yes, that sounds like it'd be amazing. But then when you get the movie, it's nothing like
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So,
Right.
True.
Well, and again, that was the tale of what we've seen
Mm-hmm.
of the MCU up to now. Deadpool Wolverine puts you back in the, okay, we're in the camp of, I care again, but what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And I have a feeling I'm with Sean on this. I think the next Captain America movie, I forget what it's called again.
Brave New World.
Brave New World is going to drop the ball. I think it's just, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
But I don't think it's going to push the needle forward, and that's not what Marvel needs. They need all full steam ahead. They need you to be excited about every release and every one of them doing well. But that's going to do it for our MCU talk. Clearly the biggest week that the MCU has had. I mean, Disney has had all year. I mean, they've really done a 180 in terms of the poor performance from last year, but even at the beginning of this year, Inside Out 2 and the success of this film, Deadpool Wolverine, has just pushed them
they
into...
needed these hits.
Oh, yeah. They needed them bad. But let's move on to our Vices segment. That's right. The power outage took us back a little bit, so we had to make up. We were in black for about maybe 6-7 minutes.
This
So.
is an easy segment, though.
It
It's not gonna
is.
be tough.
I was saying, I thought of this yesterday, and I just put it in there because I was like, oh, I don't know why.
What
but
were you doing when you thought of this?
I don't know. I was
Were you-
honestly,
were you drinking a beverage?
I was actually a little tipsy. I drank some bourbon.
Had nothing to do with coffee.
It had nothing to do with coffee.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we've talked about like drinks before and like our favorite kind of hard liquor. So I thought about coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's something I drink all the time. But how much do you drink? Do you drink too much coffee?
Not anymore.
I'm not dead yet, so I'm assuming I'm not drinking too much.
See, and I'm always dead until I have it. And then it wakes me up. And Keith, you said not anymore.
Not anymore. I used to drink a lot of coffee. Then I would start feeling jittery, and now I don't.
Ooh, get the
I
yep.
do drink probably about 2 cups a day now.
That's on average. That's me.
Yeah.
I mean, I will maybe have 3
Yeah.
because I'll do like 1 in the morning before I go to work, and then I usually do 2 at work. 1 when I get in, and then 1 later in the afternoon, just to kind of get me over that end of the day hump.
Yeah.
And then that way I can leave and have a little bit more be spry. Now here's the thing: do y'all drink things in your coffee? Creamer, sugar,
Just sugar.
sugar?
Or Splenda. I like Splenda better than sugar. But
Okay.
I got to have sweet.
On occasion, when I just typically in the morning, especially during the week when I'm working, it's just plain black coffee. On the weekends, sometimes when I'm feeling, frosty and want something like a little sweet, I might use some creamer. Or sometimes I might go somewhere and get like a iced coffee with whatever flavor.
no.
Not Starbucks. I don't go to
refuse to
Starbucks.
pay for coffee.
You steal it?
No, I make it at home. I do not go.
Technically, it's still paying.
I know
for
I'm
it.
paying for it, but I'm not paying Starbucks money.
Yeah. No, I don't pay. I don't go to
I don't
Starbucks
go and
because
I
they
don't
don't
pay
make
for that.
They don't make real coffee. Like even when I want
Gas
like,
station coffee's better than Starbucks.
like, even when I want iced coffee with creamer and such, I go like somewhere that I know I still get something that I feel like is genuinely like decently made. Like Starbucks to me like is not real coffee ever.
I mean, I'll go anywhere. I don't care. I'll go. I mean, Starbucks isn't my favorite, mainly because usually there's a lot of people in their drive-thru and they're slow. But I mean, like Heine Brothers is local. I like them.
Heine Brothers.
Scooters is a new, place in
They're
town that
okay. They're not
they're
as
a new
bad
chain.
as Starbucks, but they're still adjacent.
Yeah, no, I mean,
$7 for coffee. Come on.
but that's it. Well, not like I don't get the fancy stuff anymore, mainly because it's like high in like sugar and calories.
How
and so
much
I
is
usually,
a Starbucks black coffee?
It's
or
overpriced,
$5?
but it's like
Yeah.
$3.
$3?
Yeah, you can get if it's just black with nothing in it, it's
Yeah.
like $3.25 or something.
Man.
And that's for a venti. That's their largest size. And I mean, I'll go to like Scooters and I'll get like an iced coffee, mainly because again they're fast. But
I mean, $3 nowadays is just
Sunnergasse?
probably outright.
Sunnergasse is a local place. I like their coffee. It's great. I'm in the same boat as far as like I hardly ever, because I've got a Technivorum. I just brew it at home.
Yeah.
I actually do want to brew. I don't want to brew it. Cedar Grove Coffee House is down in Bullitt County.
Yeah, it's
and I
right
love
down the
getting their
street from me.
beans. They allow you to get like a 5-pound bag, which is a crap ton of coffee.
Yeah.
And I want to get. I actually put in an order. The owner's not there this week, so they said they'd probably get to it next week, which is fine. But I want to get that bag, a 5-pound bag, and then that way I can actually grind some up. And then I've got these mesh bags that I bought on Amazon, and you can actually put the fresh ground coffee into like a pitcher of water, and that's
cold brew.
get your cold brew.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I love cold brew. I mean, especially in the summertime, I get my
Yeah.
coffee fix
I
mixed
just
with like a
discovered
nice
that,
ice beverage.
3 weeks ago,
Really
and yeah, now
hooked.
I like cold brew coffee. Yeah,
Cold brew
It's just
coffee's
I don't
nice.
know. Sometimes it just hits different. It's like
it's
It
not
does.
like iced coffee. It's different. I don't know how to explain it. Iced coffee is just coffee over ice.
Right.
This is coffee that's been brewed in
And
cold
I
water.
do like both, but
Yeah.
cold brew is better for sure.
Yeah.
And that's usually what I get when I go like out. And that typically falls on
I
because if I haven't had the time to make it, it's kind of funny because it's like it's not hard to make, but you usually when you brew it or you put it in the bag and you put that in the fridge, it's like you got to leave it for 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I'm drank my hot coffee in the morning and that got me pepped up and ready to go, but I'm on my way into work and I'm like, I could use another coffee. I'll get a nice coffee.
Actually, that is more what I do. Is typically if I go to a coffee place to get coffee, I don't get like plain black coffee. Like at home, I do get like a cold brew or something because that is something that I don't take as much time to do.
And I like it just black. I drink all my coffee just black. I don't ever drink anything in it.
Well, I like just cold brew black coffee, but I also like cold brew and iced coffee with flavors. It just
Cold brew
depends.
is actually it's naturally sweeter because the sweetness in the beans doesn't get cooked out of it
Yeah.
when you cold brew, and there's also a ton more caffeine that does not get cooked out of it, and
I
so
love
it's
that
higher in
Stoke.
caffeine.
That was the first time I'd had it when you
Yeah,
brought
Stoke
it to
is
the
good.
lake. It was good.
That was good. That was pretty good.
I was
Yeah.
like, I'll try that again for
Yeah.
sure. Buy some.
But I am looking forward to having that Cedar Grove because I've only ever had it and just brewed it in my Technivorum.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward to actually making some cold brew with
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And that's the other thing is you can create you can get it in a gallon or make a gallon pitcher of it, and then
Yeah.
you just got it for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
And that's just
Might have
Fantastic.
So
invest in
I'm
some
gonna.
of those mesh bags.
I don't know if either one of you have ever tried it or not, but I have it at home, and I usually get about a cup every day. But I've been drinking the mushroom coffee.
I've
heard.
My sister-in-law orders the Rise.
Yeah,
mushroom
no, I
coffee.
don't pay that much.
No,
That's
no,
like
she has a subscription
stupid
for it.
money for that stuff. It's like $80 a
Hey,
bag.
she loves
Whoa,
it.
But-
really?
Yeah,
Holy
it's
crap.
very expensive. It is supposed to be very, very good, but on Amazon you can get the same amount ingredient wise for $20 a bag. Like,
well, and it's weird
you're
because I
paying
was
for the brand name on that stuff. But
first told about this by it was my doctor's office. I went and got blood work done back in like December, and she was like taking my blood, but I I went and got a coffee from McDonald's. Because truth be told, McDonald's is black coffee.
They have good coffee.
It's good.
Yeah, White Castle does too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
honestly,
when it's warm, I've gotten it cold before. It's awful.
Oh.
Like if I get hot coffee
Yeah.
and I'm expecting
I
that.
love
Yeah.
Dunkin's coffee.
Dunkin'
Dunkin'
Donuts
Donuts. I
coffee,
love
yeah,
their coffee.
yeah.
It's great.
But it was like I was sitting there, so I set that on the counter while she was like drawing my blood, and she was like, "Oh, she's like, you drink it with all that sugar or something." I'm like, no. I was like, I just like it black. She was like, "Oh," and she told me about the mushroom coffee. I was like, it was the first time I ever heard of it. I still haven't tried it, but I've heard good things
have
about
different-
it.
yeah,
Mud
different
Water
ones.
is another big name brand that's like all over social media. It's again, if you get on Amazon, you can look up a 5 or 10 mushroom coffee. It's all the same ingredients, all has the same amount of each kind of mushroom, lion's mane, what is it?
Shiitake.
Yeah.
Shiitake
All these
mushrooms.
different kinds. Each one does one's for immune, one's for your brain, one's for your heart. There's lots of different ones. They definitely keep you regular, more regular than you might have been before.
Yep.
They're both very good for gut health, so they definitely make you crap.
It's funny because that is another reason why I drink probably
Coffee?
the way I do. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like if I'm doing training for the mini or doing my Triple Crown running, first thing I do in the morning, and my brother swore by it, and I listen to him, and I do it now. I wake up, I brew a pot of coffee, and I drink. If I can get 2 cups down before I need to head out the door, I can get rid of all the junk I need to for my run.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm sorry. Carry on. You were talking about.
Oh no, I'm just saying that's the mushroom coffee is beneficial in all those different ways. It's quite a bit more expensive per scoop, which is scoop makes a cup, than regular coffee. And the only thing that I really don't like, I would say I don't like about it is all of them, whether it's Rise, Mudwater, or any kind of off-brand, it's a scoop that you put into a cup of boiling water and stir it up. It's nothing that you put in the coffee pot and brew it, which is I would rather it be brewed.
Same. It's almost like an instant coffee.
It's
at that
all
point.
it's all a scoop that you dump into your cup of hot water and stir it up and drink it. Yeah.
Okay, so it does dissolve into the water.
It does,
It's not like
yeah.
tea where you
And it has cinnamon and nutmeg and vanilla. Like there's
Different flavors.
There's natural ingredients like cinnamon and stuff
Okay.
like that. So it does have some flavor because the mushrooms don't taste like coffee.
Yeah.
You can get just the straight up mushroom stuff, or you can get it that has like the mushroom stuff and it has actual coffee in it.
Gotcha.
That's what I have. It tastes more like coffee.
Okay.
So
it does have its own distinct flavor.
It's got a flavor and it's got a texture or a consistency too. Like you have to stir it a lot.
Okay.
If you let it set, like when I'll drink it while I'm working, and if if a 2 or 3 minutes go between sips, I have to like keep a spoon in it and stir it and mix it again because it will like all the stuff will float up to the top.
Yeah.
And it's gross.
It's almost like a hot
like a
cocoa
froth.
when you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Most of them suggest you get one of those little handheld electric
frother
things
Yep,
or whatever.
Yep, just a blender, a little handheld blender.
Yeah, it's just like
they have those
stick
little,
with a wire on the end of it.
Yeah, it's like they dip like it is like a frother
Yeah.
mixer. It's
Yeah.
basically
Oh.
just like a wire pole with like this little loop on the end.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it
okay.
vibrates.
I
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, a handheld blender is like that's totally different. Then.
Yeah, I do
Okay.
have a handheld like immersion.
I need to get one of those.
Those are amazing. That's what
Yeah.
I used to make my shakes in the morning, and they're
Yep.
great.
Yep. Alrighty, I think that's gonna do it for
I think so.
our episode.
Yeah.
We didn't go
We
long.
didn't really go that much over.
It just it took us about 15 minutes to get back on the air. So we're close. We're close. But we recovered well. Thankfully, we were able to get back from the power outage there. Still had our full show. We never leave you hanging, guys.
That's right. Nothing keeps us down.
That's right. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, you can, at the bottom of your screen, like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate all the love to all of our social media networks. That's Red Moon Book on Facebook, Red Moon Tweet on X, Red Moon Pics on Instagram, and, of course, search for Red Moon Productions on both YouTube and Rumble. We're live on both those platforms. And then there's that other way of reaching out to us, that old-fashioned way. What is that, Keith?
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
That's our email address, folks. That's right. You can reach out and send us all the love there that you could think of sending us. We appreciate it all. We eat it up. We eat it for breakfast along with our coffee.
Indeed.
That was weird. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon